I was hoping that I would have had my first ride off-road on my 2019 250 EXC TPI by now, but unfortunately the guards I ordered were a little late arriving and I've only just received them. So the first ride's probably going to be this weekend. In the meantime, I decided to break the engine in just by riding around the neighborhood. So currently it's got exactly 1 hour on it, and I'm going to show in this video the procedure for the first maintenance check. To track the hours on my bike, I use the built-in hour meter and the speedometer, and you can see here it's showing exactly 1 hour. If you look in the owner's manual, chapter 10 covers the service schedule, and there's various intervals listed. The first two, 1 hour and 5 hours, are one-time only checks. So if you buy a new bike, after riding it for 1 hour, you should perform these checks. After 5 hours, these checks. And then the checks after that are repeated, so every 20 hours and every 40 hours. I'm going to go through the 1 hour checks, and the first one in the list is to read out the fault memory using KTM diagnostics tool. Only the KTM dealer mechanic has access to that tool, but what you can do if you want to read out the codes at home is to use an OBD2 diagnostic tool. And many types are available. I've gone ahead and ordered a ELM 327 Wi-Fi enabled tool, so I can link that to my smartphone and using an app be able to read out the codes. To connect the tool to the KTM, you do need an adapter cable, so be sure to buy one of those if you're interested in doing that. So the KTM uses a 6-pin connector, and you need to convert that to a 16-pin connector for OBD2. When I have the cable and tester ready, I'll be sure to make a video to show how to use it. Right now I'm not too concerned because the bike is new and it's not flashing any codes and seems to be running well, so I certainly don't think I need to take it back to the dealer to have it checked. The next check is to check that the electrical system is functioning properly, and I haven't seen any issues at all, so I've obviously checked the bike runs okay and checked the headlights, the turn signals, horn, etc. So no issues there. The next check is to check the tire condition and air pressures. I put on new tires, so no problems there, and obviously check the air pressure before each ride. And then the next checks are regarding their wheels, so check the rim run out and check the spoke tension. So I've checked the spoke tension. I actually made a video of the front wheel and showed how I adjust the spoke tension using a torque wrench. To measure the rim run out, the most accurate way of doing that and adjusting it is using a truing stand. To do a quick and dirty test, especially if you don't have a truing stand, you can just tape something to the forks or swing arm and use that as a reference and perform a measurement. The next check is to check the chain tension. To measure your chain slack, the first step is to put the bike on a work stand so the rear wheel is off the ground. Then there's two methods you can use. I still have the chain guard mounted. So if you have this mounted, you can pull the chain up and it should just about touch the chain guard here. So that feels fine, so it's touching relatively easily. If you don't have a chain guard like this fitted, what you can do is use the specification for chain slack in the manual, which is between 55 millimeters and 58. So I find it easiest using some calipers like these, and I first set it to the minimum spec, which is 55, and I place the calipers at the end of this slider, so just here on the swing arm, and then I lift the chain up and make sure that the chain travels further than the 55 millimeters, in which case there's a little bit more slack than 55 millimeters. Then I set it to the maximum specification, which is 58 millimeters, and do the same measurement. So place the calipers in the same position, and the chain slack should be less than 58 millimeters, which it is. So the chain currently is just about perfect. The next check is to check the play of the steering head bearing, and I'm going to show how to do that and adjust it. The method to check the head bearing for play is to first put the bike on a work stand so the front wheel is off the ground, and then grab the front axle area, the lower lugs of the forks, with both hands, and then pull lightly to and fro and check for play. If you can feel any play, it indicates that the head bearing is not tightened enough, and you should adjust that. Another important check to make for the head bearing tension is with the bike on a lift stand to move the handlebars from lock to lock and make sure it moves freely throughout the entire range. And you also shouldn't feel any notchiness. If it feels notchy, it could be over-tensioned, or the bearings could be getting worn out and need replacing. To adjust the head bearing, the method I use is to put the bike on the ground on a side stand. The reason being is that the weight of the bike will push down on the lower triple clamp, tending to hold that in place. If you have it up on a work stand, the lower triple clamp will want to drop down. And then the next step is to loosen the top triple clamp bolts. So you want to loosen both sides off. And make sure the triple clamps are not putting any tension on the tubes, because you want the tubes to be able to move freely within the triple clamp. And then you want to loosen this pinch bolt. The next step is to loosen the stem bolt. The next step is to tighten the triple clamp stem bolt, and the spec for that is 12 Newton meters. So you need a torque wrench. Set your torque wrench to 12 Newton meters and tighten it. The next step I think is particularly important for cast clamp models. So any standard model KTM EXC will come with cast clamps like this, and they tend to grip the tubes even when the pinch bolts are loosened. So the method is to use a mallet and tap on the top triple clamp to make sure everything is relaxed and sitting correctly, and then go back and recheck the torque on the stem bolt. So it moves slightly then, and then I like to repeat this process several times just to make sure everything is relaxed. And it moved a little bit again. So I just keep doing that until the stem bolt doesn't move anymore. And it moved very slightly then. It's getting better. And it didn't move at all then. So I think that's good now. If you have a 6 days model, then the triple clamps are CNC'd, and the machining is a lot more accurate, and you'll find when you loosen the pinch bolts, they don't grip the tubes like the cast clamps do. So that step of tapping with the mallet is not quite so important with CNC clamps. Then you're ready to tighten up the top triple clamp pinch bolts, and for the cast clamps the spec is 20 Newton meters. If you have 6 day CNC clamps, then it's 17. So be sure to adjust them depending on what triple clamps you have. And you need to go to and fro, like I'm showing. And the bottom one just reached torque, and the top one's torque now. And you'll find they move a little bit. So just keep going to and fro until both torque without moving. And that looks good now. And do the same for the other side. Then you can tighten the stem pinch bolt, and for the cast clamps the spec is 20 Newton meters. For the 6 days CNC clamps it's 17, and it recommends in the manual for the 6 days clamps that you thread lock the pinch bolt. Okay, so once you've made the adjustment, it's always a good idea to put the bike on a work stand and check for play like I showed before. The next check is to check all the hoses on the bike. Check the coolant level. Check the throttle cable. The next check I think is very important, and that's going over the whole bike and check all the fasteners for tightness. So I typically just use a wrench, go over the bike. If I find any loose ones, I'll use a torque wrench to retighten. And the final checks are to change the fuel screen. Take the bike for a test ride, read out the error memory, and then make a service entry in the warranty booklet. As my warranty is just about to expire, I'm not too bothered about that, but if you have a longer warranty, for example, I know some countries have 6 months or maybe even a year, it's probably a good idea to have these checks done by your dealer and to have them sign off on them. The next scheduled maintenance interval is 5 hours, so after my first off-road ride, I'll make an update video with that, and the main item on that is changing the gear oil.